Have you ever paid attention to how some people treat you differently once you no longer become easy to control? But let me tell you, when they cannot control you, they do one thing. They do not just walk away, but they change their tactics. They guilt trip. You spread false narrative, manipulate everything you say, anything to make you feel confused. Yes, I'm talking about those subtle psychological games that you don't even realize. When you are just living your life, they're working quietly to try and bring you down. Stoic philosophy teaches you that real power is not in controlling others, it's in not being controlled. But let me ask you this, are you truly free? Or do you react to their tricks without even realizing it? Maybe it's time to break free once and for all. Stay until the end, as the last one is the most dangerous of all. But before we move on, pay close attention to this story, because it will help you understand the wisdom behind this material, the story of Adam. Adam was someone who followed his own path. He never let anyone dictate his decisions, and that made several people uncomfortable at his workplace. His boss could never scare him in friendships. He never fell for manipulation, even in family. He maintained some boundaries that made some people uncomfortable. He thought that if he did this, people would respect him more. But instead, something strange happened. People who used to praise him began to criticize him. Friends who admired him for his confidence started calling him selfish. Colleagues who used to admire him began to spread false rumors. Confused and frustrated, he went to meet an old mentor named Mr. Carter, a retired businessman known for his wisdom. Mr. Carter. So Adam asked, "Why do people turn against me the moment I refuse to be controlled?" Mr. Carter chuckled and led him to his backyard. He said, "Two horses were tied there very close to each other. One was tied to a pole, while the other was free." He said, "Watch closely." Mr. Carter said he walked up to the tied horse, and it stood calmly. But when he approached the free horse, they stepped back, careful and alert. "Do you realize," he said, "people are like this when they can tie you down. They feel secure, but when you're free, they start to get sensitive because they cannot predict or control you." Adam frowned. "So what do they do?" Mr. Carter sighed. "They do not try to free you. They will try to break you. They will call you difficult, selfish, arrogant. They'll twist your independence into a bad thing. Not because you are doing wrong, but because your freedom reminds them of their shackles that night." Adam finally realized that people do not turn against him because he's wrong. They turn against him because he's beyond their control. So he stopped explaining himself. He stopped seeking approval. He stopped letting guilt make decisions for him. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The manipulators left, the weak-minded faded, and those who were truly strong stayed, because true strength respects strength. Before we dive into the first lesson, if you like these videos, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button for notifications for more content. Let's get started. Number 1, they try to manipulate you. Let's talk about what happens when people realize that you can't be controlled. They become manipulative. Some people strive on control. They want to dictate your actions, influence your decisions, shape your behavior to fit their needs. But when they see that you're independent, that you don't bend easily, they don't back down. They change their approach instead of direct control. They use subtle manipulation about your emotions, trying to make you feel guilty, obligated, or pressured to follow along. Here's the reality when someone cannot control you outright. They try to influence you indirectly, guilt-tripping you, the "after all I have done for you, this how you treat me," or using flattery. "You are amazing at this. I never know what I would do without you." If that fails, they create urgency or play the victim, anything to make you feel responsible for their emotions. And it is never about respect. It's about maintaining control over you without making it obvious. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Lao once said, "He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still." That is the truth. Self-mastery, true, Power is not about controlling others. It's about no longer being controlled. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions, guilt, doubt, or fear. The moment you recognize their tactics, refuse to engage you, take away their power. Think of it like chess. Manipulation is like a game of chess. Every move they make is designed to provoke a reaction out of you. They set traps, expect you to panic, and then hope you play directly to their hands. But what happens if you do not? If you stay calm, observe, and refuse to move, according to their strategy, they lose the best way to beat. Manipulation is not to fight. It's to stop playing the game altogether. I remember once dealing with someone who had this kind of tic. Every time something came up, they would twist the situation in their favor. One day they asked for a favor that made me uncomfortable. I politely declined, but instead of accepting it, they sighed and said, "Wow, I thought we were closer than that." That moment, I felt it. The guilt creeping in, the urge to explain myself. But then I paused. Instead of defending my decision, I just smiled and said, "I know what you are doing." That single sentence changed everything. Their face shifted. They knew they had been caught. They stammered, tried to laugh it off. But I didn't engage. That was the last time they tried to manipulate me. And that's the point. Once you realize manipulation, it loses its power. So, how do you handle people like this? First, recognize their tactics. If someone is making you feel guilty, pressured, or obligated, stop and ask yourself, is this a request, or is this manipulation? Secondly, stay calm and firm. The more neutral your response, the less control they have on you, and finally refuse to play the game. You don't have to defend yourself, argue, or prove anything. Just say no and move on. At the end of the day, manipulation only works when you engage with it. By the moment you stop engaging, stop explaining, and stop claiming responsibility for someone else's reaction, they lost control. Master yourself, hold your ground, and remember your decisions are yours alone. Number 2, they spread false narratives about you. Let's talk about one of the lowest tactics people use when they realize that they can't control you. They spread fake news now instead of facing you directly. They create false narrative, twist the story, and try to turn people against you. Why? Because they know they can't manipulate you. They attack your reputation. Instead, it's not about fact, it's about control. Here's what the reality: false narratives are a tool of the weak. When people don't have facts on their side, they resort to gossip, exaggerations, or even outright lies. They want you to react, to defend yourself, to panic, because in that moment they win. They pulled you in to play their game. But here's the truth: real power lies in not reacting. Think of it like mud slinging. Imagine someone throwing mud at you. If you try to fight back, you will only get dirtier. But if you stand still, let the mud dry out, and simply dust yourself, you walk away clean. That's how false narrative works. The more you fight against them, the dirtier you look. But if you stand firm, the lies eventually fade away by themselves. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you've already won." Think about that. Your silence is your victory. The moment you stop caring about what others say, you take the power away. Because truth doesn't need defense. It speaks for itself. I remember once in my life, someone deliberately spread false rumors about me. At first, my instinct was to defend myself, to correct every lie. But then I stopped. Instead of reacting, I focused on being the exact version of who I was, letting my actions prove my truth. And you know what happened? The lies lost their impact. The more I ignored them, the more people started seeing the reality, and the person who spread the lies eventually ended up exposing themselves. Lies have a short lifespan, but truth stays forever. So how do you handle people like this? First, don't engage the moment you argue. You only give power to their lies. Second, let your character do the talking. Truth doesn't need a defense. It proves itself over time. And finally, remember, people who spread lies reveal more about themselves than they do about you. At the end of the day, false words hold no weight unless you give them attention. So stand free, stay silent, and watch as truth makes its way to the surface. Because those who rely on lies always lose in the end. Number 3, they play the victim. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative tactics people use when they cannot control you. That is, that they play the victim. Instead of being accountable for their actions, they flip the script, act like they're the victim, and seek sympathy from others. Why? Because if they can't control you directly, they will control how others see you. Here's the reality. Playing the victim is not about seeking justice. It's about avoiding accountability. These people twist facts, exaggerate situations, and make themselves seem helpless, all to get support and validation. And the more you try to explain or defend yourself, the worse it gets. Because now you look like the aggressor, while they sit back, soaking in sympathy. Imagine someone putting on an Oscar-worthy performance playing the innocent victim while making you the villain. If you step onto his stage and argue, you become part of the ACT, but if you refuse play along, the audience eventually sees the truth. People who fake victimhood rely on the reactions, don't give them one, and this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epicurus once said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions," that the key emotion control the moment you let their performance affect you. They win, but if you stay calm, detached, and let time reveal the truth, you take away their power. I remember dealing with someone who always played the victim whenever they were confronted. One day, after constantly crossing a border, I finally stood up for myself, and before a response, they acted shocked, told others I attacked them. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. At first, I wanted to defend myself, to prove my side, but then I stopped. I let my actions speak. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't play their game. And you know what happened? People started seeing the truth on their own, because no matter how much someone plays, the victim lies always unravel and real character always shines through. So how do you handle people like this? Don't engage. Arguing would only make you look guilty in their story. Second, let their actions expose them. The more they lie, the more obvious it becomes. And finally, protect your energy. You don't have to prove anything. The truth has a way of surfacing on its own. At the end of the day, manipulators use victimhood as a weapon, but only if you give them an audience, the best response. Stay calm, stay quiet, and let reality do the talking, because in the end, the truth always outlasts the performance. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 4, they introduce the isolation. Let's talk about one of the sneaky tactics people use when they cannot control you. They try to isolate you instead of confronting you directly. They go behind your back, planting doubts, twisting stories, turning friends, colleagues, or even family against you. Why? Because they fear your independence. If you happen to have strong relationships and support, they can't manipulate you, so their goal is simple: cut you off and make you feel alone. Here's the truth. Isolation is a tactic of the weak people who thrive on control, can't stand when you think for yourself, so they spread rumors, create tension, and subtly influence those around you. They want you to doubt who you can trust, question your worth, and ultimately become dependent on them. The more you feel lonely, the easier you are to control. Think of it like a wolf pack in the wild. Predators isolate their target from the pack before they strike. Why? Because a lone prey is easier to take down. Manipulators do the same thing. They don't attack when you're surrounded by strong allies. Instead, they create conflict, tension, and misunderstandings to pull you away from those who support you. But once you recognize this, you can outsmart them. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who improve. You avoid those who would pull you down." That's the key. Surround yourself with people who strengthen you, not those who divide and manipulate. True friends and allies will see through lies over time. And those who turn against you, they were never meant to stay. I once knew someone who slowly tried to turn people against me. It started small, subtle comments. I don't know if you can really trust them. Then came the exaggerations. Everything I said was twisted. And at first, I was frustrated, tempted to confront them. But then I realized that the more I fought back, the more control I gave them. So instead, I focused on strengthening my actual relationships. I stayed consistent in my actions, let my character speak louder than their words. And guess what? In time, people began seeing the truth on their own. Those who mattered stay, those who believed lies. They were never my people to begin with. So how do you handle people like this? First, stay calm. The more you react, the more fuel you give them. Second, nourish real connections. The people who really know. You won't be fooled for long. Finally, don't chase those who turn away. If someone is easily swayed against you, let them go. At the end of the day, those who fear your independence will try to isolate you, but they can't break what's unshaken. Stay strong, stay connected. And remember, real relationships don't fall apart because of someone else's lies. Number 5, they challenge your confidence. Let's talk about a subtle but dangerous tactic some people use when they can't control you. They challenge your confidence. They won't attack you directly, but they will plant seeds of doubt. They will question your decisions, make you second-guess yourself, and subtly undermine your capabilities. Why? Because if they can make you doubt yourself, they regain power over you. Here's the truth. Those who question your confidence aren't offering constructive advice. They're testing your self-belief. They want you to hesitate, seek their validation, to feel uncertain about your choice. Because the more unsure you are, the easier it is to influence you. Think of it like shaky bridge. Imagine you are walking across a bridge. It looks strong, but someone standing nearby keeps saying, "Are you sure that bridge can hold you?" What if it collapses? At first, you feel confident, but the more they talk, the more you start questioning yourself, not because the bridge is weak, but because they made you doubt it. That's how confidence works. Your judgment is solid, but manipulators shake it on purpose. The trick is to recognize what they're doing and keep walking. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epicus once said, "A person's worth is not determined by external approval." True confidence doesn't come from others agreeing with you. It comes from trusting yourself. The moment you stop seeking validation and stand by your decisions, you become unshakable. I remember a time when someone constantly questioned my choices. Every time I made a decision, they'd raise an eyebrow. "Are you sure that seems risky?" At first, I explained myself. I tried to justify my decisions and prove I was right, but then I realized they weren't questioning me because they knew better. They were doing it to make me unsure. So one day I stopped explaining. I simply said, "Yes, I am sure," that was it. No justification, no debate. It happened. You know what? They had nothing left to say because confidence doesn't need to argue. It just stands firm. So how do you handle people like this? First, trust yourself. If you made a decision based on the reason and experience, don't let someone's doubt shake you. Second, stop over-explaining. The more you justify yourself, the more they'll poke holes in your confidence. And finally, remember that doubt is their tool, not your truth. Just because someone questions you doesn't mean you're wrong. At the end of the day, your confidence is your power. People will challenge it, test it, and try to weaken it, but only if you let them stand firm. Trust yourself and never let someone else's doubt become your own. Number 6, they provoke you emotionally. Let's talk about one of the oldest tricks in the book, provoking you emotionally. When someone realizes they can't control you with logic or manipulation, they resort to pushing your buttons. They abuse words that frustrate, insult, or enrage you, not because they care about the argument, but because they want you to lose control. The moment you react emotionally, they win. Here's the truth: they want you to get angry so they can claim the moral high ground. They make statements that mock, belittle, or twist your words just to get a reaction the moment you snap. They'll turn around and tell everyone, "See, I told you they were unreasonable." Suddenly, you become the bad guy. They walk away playing the victim. Think of it like a fire and wind. Imagine your emotions are flame, and they are the wind. The more you react, the bigger the fire grows. But what happens when you don't feed it? The fire dies out. That's why staying calm is your biggest weapon. If they can't make you explode, they have nothing left to use against you. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's the key, refusing to react in the way they expect. When you stay calm in the face of provocation, you rob them of their power. You remain in control, and they walk away frustrated instead of victorious. I remember a time when someone tried baiting me into an argument. They made provocations, exaggerated things. They even brought up the past just to get me emotional. I could feel the anger boiling, but instead of snapping, I just smiled and said, "Interesting perspective." Nothing else. No explanation. No defense. And you know what happened? They froze. They didn't know what to do because they expected a reaction. That was the moment I realized staying calm isn't weakness. It's power. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the game. If someone is deliberately trying to provoke you, pause and ask yourself, do they actually want to talk, or do they just want me to react? Second, control your response. If you feel emotions rising, take a breath before speaking and finally walk away from unnecessary battles. Every argument, every point is not worth your energy, and some fights are won simply by not engaging. At the end of the day, your emotions belong to you. If someone tries to provoke you, stay calm, stay detached, and let them burn themselves. Because in the end, the strongest person in the room is always the one who refuses to be controlled. If you've watched all this video till now, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like. If you enjoyed the content, your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 7, they copy you. Let's talk about a tactic that's both frustrating and revealing when people start copying you. At first, it might seem like a coincidence. You make a bold move and they do something similar. You introduce a new idea. They act like they thought of it first, and then you realize they're not competing anymore, they're imitating. Here's the truth. If they cannot defeat you, they will try to become you, instead of forging their own path. They imitate yours, hoping to absorb your success without doing the work. But here's the catch. No matter how much they copy, they'll always be a step behind imitation. May fool people for a while, but it can never replace originality. Think of it like a shadow versus the sun. A shadow moves when the light moves, but it can never create its own glow. That's what copying is, a lifeless imitation of something real. No matter how much they try to act like you, they can never replace the essence that makes you unique. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." Your true value isn't in what you do. It's in who you are. Someone can copy your word style, even your ideas, but they can never copy your mind, your experience, or your authenticity. I remember someone like this who would copy almost everything I did every time I made progress. They followed the same steps. If I took on a new challenge, they'd suddenly be interested in the same thing. At first it was frustrating. I felt like my work was being stolen. But then I realized something. The more they copied, the more obvious it became that they had nothing of their own. One day, I switched things up and changed my approach completely. And guess what? They had no idea what to do. Because when you're always following, you're never leading. That's when I learned imitation is just proof that you're ahead. So how do you handle people like this? Stop worrying about them. The fact that they're copying means they are already behind. Second, keep evolving. The more you grow, the harder it becomes for them to keep up. And finally, remember that imitation isn't flattery. It's a sign of insecurity. They copy because they lack the confidence to be themselves. At the end of the day, copies fade, but originality lasts forever. Keep being yourself, keep leading, and let imitators struggle to keep up, because no one can replace what makes you unique. Number 8. They wait for you to fail. Let's talk about a harsh reality that some people do not support you. They just pretend to smile in your face. They nod at your ambitions. They say, "I'm so happy for you." But deep down, they're waiting not for you to rise, but for you to fall, because your success challenges them, and if they can't beat you, they'd rather see you lose. Here's the truth. Some people are not cheering for you. They're keeping score. They don't clap because they believe in you. They clap because they're waiting for the moment you stumble. And when you do, they'll be the first to whisper, "I knew it." But here's where they fail, because real success doesn't depend on their approval. Think of it like storm. And a weak tree bends under strong winds, but a deeply rooted tree, it stands firm, no matter how much the storm rages. The people hoping for your failure are like the wind. They make noise. They push against you, but they can't break you unless you let them. The stronger your foundation and roots, the less their opinion matter. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall." Your focus should be on growth, not on proving people wrong. Success isn't about proving anything to them. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. I once had someone in my life who acted supportive, but always made small comments. "Are you sure this will work?" Or, I hope you make it, but let's see." At first, I ignored it. But as time passed, I realized they weren't rooting for me. They were waiting for me to mess up. And one time when I faced a setback, they were too quick to remind me, "See, I told you, this wasn't easy." That's when I knew they never believed in me. They were just waiting for a moment to confirm their doubts. And so I stopped explaining, stopped seeking validation, and focused on my journey. The result, I succeeded, and their silence spoke louder than their fake support ever did. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the signs. If someone only appears when you struggle and vanishes when you win, that's a clue. Stop wasting energy. Proving yourself your success is for you, not for them. They will never applaud every step you take. Let your actions speak. That's it. When you cross the finish line, that's when you'll garner applause. Let success be your answer. Keep moving forward, keep evolving, because nothing bothers them more than watching you rise when they swore you would fall. At the end of the day, some people wait for your failure like it's entertainment. Don't give them the satisfaction. Succeed anyway.